Here with Mike, Tuesday Talks with Mike about writing.
Good morning, folks. Today we're going to talk about how to start a novel. When I graduated university, I thought I'd write a paperback novel and make some fast money. So I sat down and started to write. About 20,000 words later, I realized I didn't know what I was doing, so I set it aside. It took me 30 years to learn how to write a novel, but that's because I'm a slow learner. And you don't have to be a slow learner. There are always exceptions to this rule. Carson McCullers wrote The Heart is a Lonely Hunter when she was 24 years old. William Styron wrote As I Lay Dying when he was 26. But those people are exceptions. John Braid, the great English novelist, recommended that nobody attempt to write a novel before they were 40 years old because they simply did not have enough life experience. But this isn't about that. It's about the opening to a novel. Many people who want to write hold off because they don't know how to start the story. When I was writing without any outline or notes, I would just wing it. And when I looked at it later, I would often find that the first several paragraphs were gibberish and that I had actually begun the story in the third or fourth paragraph, or sometimes on the third or fourth page. I no longer make that mistake, and I hope that these hints that I will give you will help you avoid making that mistake. You can always think of the famous first lines of novels that have endured for a long time. Call me Ishmael. That's the first line in Moby Dick. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. That's A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. But we aren't all Charles Dickens, so we have to make our own way. I will tell you this, that the surest way to find your way into a novel so that the readers will keep reading is with a description of a place where the action takes place, or a description of a person. If you begin with a description of a place, you're two steps ahead because people want to hear about it, especially if you make it interesting, such as the Overlook Hotel in The Shining. The Overlook Hotel was a white wedding cake of a hotel encompassing 3 stories in a remote Colorado town. It was neo-Victorian in design. There were pillars out front. There was a swimming pool out front, and it had a topiary that looked like a maze. That's a kind of enticing description that a reader wants to know more. Also, if you begin with a description of a person, and it has to be interesting, that will also lure a reader into a story. The man appeared to be in his mid-50s. He was morbidly obese. He wore a suit that was too small for him. He had 4 chins. He sat at the dining room table, staring at the 3 dishes filled with food that he had ordered. And then you go on into your story. It's important to understand how point of view affects the reader and your writing. We all know what third person is. Third person is Bob went into a room. We all know what first person is. It's I went into a room. We all know what second person is. You went into a room. Never use the second person.
Excuse me.
Excuse me.
Sorry.
No one likes it. Stick with the third person or the first person. The beauty of the first person point of view is that everything that the reader learns is filtered through one set of eyes and one mind, which necessarily brings its own worldview, its experience to what it sees. That's part of what makes you a unique writer. We're all unique human beings, and we all have personal experiences and views that have formed over many years. And invariably, some of these views will seep their way into our writing. That's all right if you understand temperance and you understand story. And don't waste the reader's time on points of views that aren't important. Like a great argument between 2 people about whether 1-ply toilet paper is superior to 2-ply toilet paper. That's the kind of argument that only works in a Florida Man story. A great writer once told me that whoever wants something the most owns the point of view. Keep that in mind while you're writing. Speaking of point of view, I prefer a close personal point of view. First person narrative necessarily forces you into a close personal point of view because it's all one person. I think that The Sun Also Rises is written in the first person, and everything is filtered through that person's point of view, and you're aware of that, but the person is worldly wise and contains enough experience to be able to tell a story without coming across as a crank. You want to be careful about crankism in your own writing and descriptions. You can put it in the words of a character, but don't put it in the words of the narrator. There's also the universal point of view, and that's when the point of view changes from person to person within the confines of a single chapter. James Michener used to do this. Kevin J. Anderson does it all the time. But it's called an omniscient point of view, and you have to have a high point of observation to get away with it, which means that the narrator is 100 feet over the action, looking down, so that the point of view can jump around from person to person. But a close personal point of view is right down there in the action.
Why would someone use an omniscient point of view?
Well, when
What's
you're
the
writing
purpose?
a really big story, like Michener or Kevin J. Anderson, you often have scenes with multiple people interacting. And those scenes, it's the interaction that's important and not the observations of any individual in that interaction. You can put those observations in because you're jumping around from person to person, but you have to know what you're doing, or else the reader will feel it's jarring, because you're in a room and Bob is describing everything that's going on, and then Sally is looking at Bob and says, "That guy looks funny," and she thought about all the time she'd seen guys acting odd, and it set off alarm bells in her, and the reader says, how come we're switching around like this? But a good writer who is looking at the action from 100 feet up can get away with that. It's just a matter of practice.
And then what would the purpose be for a first person point of view? Why would you use that versus something else?
It lends itself to a certain type of story. When I think of first person point of view, the first person I think of is John D. MacDonald's Travis McGee character. The Travis McGee novels are masterpieces of American pulp writing, and the reason why I'm writing today, and why many others are writing, everything is filtered through the view of Travis McGee, a world-weary beach bum who's semi-retired, who makes his living by going after money that was wrongfully taken from another person and keeps half of whatever he recovers. But Travis's point of view extends to so much more. This was writing in the 60s, John D. MacDonald, in the 60s and 70s, he was acutely aware of environmental degradation going on in Florida, and he often mentioned it from Travis's point of view. He says, well, I've been down this branch of the river before, and I saw that all the mangrove trees had been cut for lumber, and it just occurred to me it was only a matter of time before they started setting up condominiums on shifting sand. In fact, MacDonald wrote a book called Condominium, which is all about that, about this big condominium built on the sand with no foundation, and what happens when a hurricane comes in. First person point of view is excellent for presenting the author's views on certain things, as long as you temper it with reason and the first commandment. And the first commandment is that everything you write is designed to entertain.
Okay, well, thank you. What are other points for people starting to write a book?
I used to sit down and wing it, as I said, and I ended up writing 1 million words of gibberish. And I believe that any would-be writer has 1 million words of gibberish clogging up his system. And you have to get that out before you get to good stuff. It's like running the water faucet until the water turns cold. So I encourage you to write every day. Carry a tablet and a pen with you at all times. And when you get to the point where you understand story and know that you're no longer writing gibberish, you will know it. I also outline very few writers, very few successful writers just sit down and start a novel without outlining it. Two of them are Peter Brandvold, the Western writer, and Elmore Leonard, who wrote more pulp novels turned into movies than anyone I can name. And I'm just going to mention one of them, which is Valdez is Coming. It's a brilliant novel and it's a brilliant movie and one of the greatest Westerns you've never seen. It stars Burt Lancaster, and I urge you to watch Valdez is Coming.
All right, that's great. And we are taking input on future topics. There are topics that you really are interested in hearing Mike talk about on writing, or it could be what other topics, Mike, would you discuss in your videos?
Like, what's the best knife for eviscerating a bear?
Okay, we're going to do a little panorama here of our dog, Mac. She's an old dog. She's 13 years old.
She's got a job as a greeter at Walmart.
And then our puppy, Freddie, who is our youngest. He's 4 years old. And then what do you call that vacuum sweeper? You have a
Wallace.
name. Wallace. It's always handy because having 3 dogs. Oh, and then Bob. Bob, do you want to say hi to the audience? Because we have 3 dogs. So as you can imagine, they always try again, muddy little paws. All right, like I said last time, we are trying to make a point to do these videos on Tuesdays. Mike has a busy schedule writing. I have a busy schedule because I have more than one job. But anyway, we appreciate you watching. Please subscribe, ring the bell, do all that good stuff. And thanks for being here. Bye-bye.